Before I tell you what happened inside that house on a Tuesday evening in 1964, I need you to understand something. I need you to understand what it feels like to look at a child, a 6-year-old child, and feel your chest crack open with pity. Not sympathy, not concern, pity. The kind of pity that crawls into your stomach and sits there like a stone because you're looking at something so small, so fragile, so fundamentally tiny and vulnerable that every instinct in your adult body is screaming at you to pick that child up and carry him somewhere safe, somewhere far away from the room he's standing in. His feet were bare. I remember that. Bare feet on a carpet so worn down it was practically concrete. His toes were curling into the fibers like he was trying to grip the earth itself, like he was bracing for something. His shoulders were hunched forward, his head was tilted down, and his hands, these impossibly small hands, were balled into fists at his sides. He looked like he was about to be punished. And honestly, in a way, he was. But here's the thing nobody tells you about that night. Nobody tells you what happened in the 90 seconds after the moment everyone thinks they know about. Nobody tells you about the silence, the absolute cathedral-level silence that fell over that cramped living room when a 6-year-old boy named Michael Joe Jackson opened his mouth and did something that none of us, not his father, not his brothers, not me, were remotely prepared for. My name is Harold Crenshaw. In 1964, I was 26 years old, and I was the custodial maintenance worker for the Gary, Indiana Public School District. I also happened to be Joseph Jackson's neighbor. And what I saw that night didn't just change Michael's life, it shattered mine into a before and an after. This is the story nobody was supposed to hear. I knew this because I could hear it through the walls. My apartment was in the building next door, separated from the Jackson house by maybe 15 feet of cracked concrete and a chain-link fence that was missing half its links. Every evening, starting around 5:30, I'd hear the music start. Joe had a record player, a decent one actually, better than anything else in that house, and he'd put on James Brown, Jackie Wilson, The Temptations, and those 5 boys would rehearse until their legs gave out. Now, I need to be honest about Joe Jackson here, because the easy version of this story is the one where he's just a monster, and I understand why people tell it that way. But reality is more complicated than YouTube thumbnails, and the truth is that Joe Jackson in 1964 was a man who had watched his own dreams die on the vine. He'd played guitar in a band called the Falcons, not the Detroit Falcons, a local Gary group, and when that went nowhere, he'd taken a job at Inland Steel and started pouring his unfulfilled ambition into his children, like molten metal into a cast. Was he hard on those boys? Yes, unforgivably hard. Did he hit them? I'm going to tell you what I saw with my own eyes and let you draw your own conclusions. But here's what I also knew about Joe. He was precise. He ran those rehearsals like a foreman runs a shift. Every step had to be exact, every harmony had to lock, every transition had to be seamless, and if it wasn't, if Tito's guitar was a half step flat, if Jermaine missed a bass note, if Jackie's footwork was sloppy, Joe would stop the record and the room would go quiet, and you could hear the correction through the walls. You could hear everything through those walls. Which is how I ended up inside that house on a Tuesday evening in October of 1964, standing in the doorway of that cramped living room, watching something I was never supposed to see. Jackson had asked me to fix the kitchen faucet. That's the mundane truth of it. I was handy. I worked maintenance for the school district, which meant I could fix just about anything that involved pipes, wiring, or drywall. Catherine was a kind woman, a deeply, quietly kind woman who held that household together with prayer, patience, and a stubbornness that I think people underestimate. She'd mentioned the leaking faucet to me over the fence on a Sunday after church, and I'd told her I'd come by Tuesday after my shift. So there I was, Tuesday, about 6 in the evening, tool bag in hand, standing in the Jackson kitchen, which was roughly the size of a walk-in closet, with my head under the sink and a wrench in my hand, listening to the rehearsal happening 12 feet away in the living room. The older boys were running through a routine. I could hear Joe counting, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the thump of feet on that worn carpet, and the scratch of the record player needle, and the tinny sound of a Motown track playing through a single speaker. They were working on something up-tempo. I think it was a James Brown arrangement, but I can't be certain. What I can tell you is that it sounded tight. Those boys were good. Even then, even before anyone outside of Gary knew their names, those boys could move. But there was a problem.